So investor could call you. You could send him property listings. He could purchase a property. You could manage it for him, and then he'd just collect a check. And then in 5 years, he could probably sell it and do fairly well in appreciation.
Yes and no. Now here's the speech I have, and this is something that
Now there's risk in everything. There's not a guarantee. Don't.
This is
This is real estate investing. This is okay.
So you call me up and you say you want to buy a property in Detroit.
Yeah.
My answer is, well, I'll sell you a property in Detroit, but I don't want to sell you a property in Detroit. I want to sell you 10 properties in Detroit, and here's why. The reality of Detroit is this, and I'm sure it's like this in many other big cities and lower income areas, but the reality for Detroit is this. You buy 10 properties, okay?
Yeah.
One of them is going to end up being a catastrophic loss. You're going to have a property where the people in it move out and they drag their feet for 2 months, and you finally get to the eviction court and you get your eviction and you get the writ, and they won't take cash for keys, which is something that we do for everybody. We try our best to do cash for keys as much as possible. A lot of landlords hate this, but my theory is, you know what? I don't really care what your opinion is on it based on emotion, because this isn't about emotion. We're going to pay them $500 or even $1,000 to walk away from the property, because it's going to cost us $1,000 to go through the eviction process. So yeah, we're paying a deadbeat tenant $500 or $1,000 to walk out of the property, but you get your property back. We get the keys in hand. The property is cleaned out and they haven't stripped it. If you evict them, they may go the night before when they see the dumpster show up on their front lawn and they know that the eviction bailiffs are coming the next day, they will strip everything out of that property and leave it trashed, and you get the property back. You spend $1,000. You don't have the keys to it. You have to put new locks on it, and that's the least bit of your problems. You've got a property that's been stripped out and vandalized, and it's full of garbage.
Yeah. Wow.
So why pay $1,000 for that when you can pay off, and basically you're bribing the deadbeat that you're evicting to leave your property in decent shape and to give you the keys. The banks do it, and they pay $2,500.
Wow.
We'll pay $500 or $1,000 all day long if we can get the property back and take control over it.
Yeah.
We try to minimize that happening, though, by making sure that our vetting process for prospective tenants is thorough, making sure that they've got triple the income of rent, a 3-to-1 rent to income ratio.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We want to make sure that they have an actual source of income that's verifiable, that they've got some references, including their current landlord and ideally a previous landlord. Because, if you got that tenant and you're the current landlord and someone calls you up, you're going to say, you know what? Yeah, they're great tenants. I think they'd be perfect for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you want them out of your house. So I don't really want to talk to the current landlord, although I do. I want to talk to the previous landlord. I want to talk to the employer, and I want some references on there that are verifiable. If they've got credit where they've got bad credit and it shows up, and everybody's got deemed credit or bad credit. I lost $1 million in 2007, 8, and 9. So I know what it's like to have bad credit and to be dinged. I'm not a bad guy. My credit's still bad. And you know what? We don't judge on credit scores. But if you've got Comcast, Dish Network, DirecTV, WOW Cablevision, and whatever else service all reporting on your credit as being that you're not paying, well, you're not paying your bills. You're not paying your cable bill. If you've got, AT&T and Sprint and T-Mobile and, another phone provider on your phone that shows you're not paying your cell phone bill, you have a lifestyle of a non-payer.
Yeah.
But the most important thing we're looking for is what I call landlord-tenant history. If you've got judgments from your old landlords or you've got evictions on your record, we just won't rent to you.
Yeah.
If you got one eviction from 8 years ago, that's something to really seriously consider, and we'll discuss that with the actual property owners or make a judgment call if it's one of our in-house holdings. But by and large, someone who's been evicted, I don't want to deal with them, because as far as I'm concerned, if you don't have a house to live in, then it doesn't really matter if you've got a cell phone or if you've got electric bills or if you've got your car payment. I mean, you need your house. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they think there is more likeliness to be evicted a second time. A tenant will be evicted a second time if they've been evicted one time.
Yeah. So back to the 10 properties. So
Okay.
One property is going to be a catastrophic loss. It just is.
Okay.
You're going to have one house out of 10.
Why?
that they're going to leave in the middle of the night and strip out the furnace and the water heater, and then someone down the street's going to see them leaving and come over and trash the house, and people are going to move into it and use it as a drug house, and we're not going to know about it for weeks or a month because we're not going to see any, like, I mean, we're not at the house every day. We manage, hundreds of properties, so
Yeah.
we have a process in place, and we'll find out about it sooner rather than later, but we don't know about it the next day or even the next week sometimes. So what ends up happening, and neither would anybody else unless you're living upstairs or downstairs from the property. So you've got a property that gets stripped, and when you find out about it, it's already been trashed. And then someone goes in and rips out the copper out of the walls, and what you're left with is a house that it'd be cheaper to buy the house down the street that's in decent shape, or buy the house a few doors down for a few dollars that just needs a little bit of work, than to spend a few thousand fixing this one up and making it right. It just doesn't make sense from a business standpoint. So you lose a house. Okay. Well, if you're buying 10 houses and you have one house that's a loss, and you're dealing with the kinds of returns that we're dealing with here, that's okay,
Yeah.
because the numbers on the plus side more than make up for that loss. But if you just got one house and you lose that house, you lost your whole investment.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with anyone who's going to lose their whole investment. I don't want to be the guy on the other end of the phone saying, "I'm sorry, you've lost your whole investment."
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Now, if you lost a house, what could you do? Could you like level it and then just hold the lot?
No, I mean, you sell it for wholesale for a few $1,000s. Someone will buy it. Someone will buy everything. You can sell it on land contract as is to other people in the neighborhood and recoup your investment that way. I mean, there's a lot of different exit strategies to try and turn that chaff back into wheat.
Yeah.
But it's not a situation anybody really wants to be in, but it does come up from time to time.
No, it's just that concept of losing a house is just baffling to me. But I understand what you're saying is making good sense.
But you got 9 more.
Yeah.
Now the 9 more you've got, 3 of those 9 more, 3 of them are occupied by what I call professional squatters. They're people who move into a house and then they milk it for a couple months and then they move out. They don't go to eviction. They just milk it for a few months. So you lose your income on those. You get a little bit of money, but basically you lose your income on them and you have to turn them. It's a pain in the ass, but it's the reality of the situation. Now the next 3 of the 10 are people who pay their bills every month, but sometimes they're a little short and sometimes they fall a little bit behind, but they're basically bill payers. So you get your money out of them. You're just not always current.
Yeah.
And then the next 3 are the people who call you on the first and say, I dropped the rent off last night at the mailbox. So you got, and this is just an average, and I don't know, it's really accurate, but it's more of the feel of it. You got about a third good, a third okay, and a third bad, and then 1 really bad out of 10. And we try to get rid of those really, really bad people and minimize them. So maybe it's 1 in 20 or 1 in 50, which is where that ratio really should be. I mean, ideally it would be 0, but it's not realistic. And the thing about it is you have insurance on these properties, but insurance isn't going to cover a lot of you think insurance is going to cover that house, but it just doesn't.
No.
Insurance will cover it if it burns down. Insurance will cover a certain amount of the vandalism, but insurance isn't going to cover the theft of materials from the house if there's vandalism involved. These insurance companies know what they're doing, and their job is to not pay out on claims. So if your house burns down and it's a total loss, you're going to get your money. Otherwise, your insurance is covering you for liability, and that's really where it's at. So you want to make sure that you buy the best houses in the best areas, specifically block by block, and mitigate that risk up front. And that's the 2 ways you do it. You buy right, and you buy enough to where you've got a scale. In your market or in a high dollar market, you still got the same issues. If you buy one house and it's vacant, you're producing 0 cash flow, and you're negative cash flowing because you've still got expenses.
Yeah.
If you own a duplex and 1 goes vacant, well, now you're at 50%. If you own 10, now you're at 90%.
Yeah.
So scale is important. Buy more cheaper units rather than focus on one expensive unit. And for a smaller investor, $100,000, you can buy a nice handful of properties in Detroit. $100,000 in a lot of markets won't even get you a down payment on an investment property.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Now, if you're going to buy 10 houses in Detroit, do you spread them out like Farmington Hills, Oak Park, Centerline, put some in Westland, some, down the south, like, Lincoln Park, that area, or do you buy them all kind of in a centralized area?
Well, I don't really go outside of I have my geographic area, which is the east side of Detroit.
Okay.
Some on the west side, southwest Detroit. Not much in downriver or the west side. So you talk about Westland there and Lincoln Park. I mean,
Hmm.
that's really getting out of our area. Farmington Hills, I wouldn't consider those aren't investment grade houses out there. They're too expensive, so they're not going to cash flow right.
Okay.
You're looking at really really low caps on those, 2, 3, 4, 5%.
Wow. Okay.
Um, but the first tier of suburbs, Royal Oak, Ferndale, Southfield, Warren, East Point, Harper Woods, St. Clair Shores, those suburbs, Roseville, all along the northern and eastern side of Detroit, um, all are excellent places for investments. But your ROI on those, you have to expect reality is probably going to get you down close to that 10% mark, and your investment cost is going to be a lot higher. So yeah, those are good places. Those are places we work in the city, though. We try to keep as much possible, on the near west side or on the east side or in southwest Detroit. And you're unless you're buying a single multifamily, like you mentioned, the Grand property, which is a 5 unit.
Yeah.
You're buying 5 units in one building there, which is fabulous. You've got pluses of multifamilies. One of the pluses of multifamilies is you've got you've got neighbors in your house that you control. So if Jim in unit 1 sees that Bob in unit 2 has moved out and left the door open, he doesn't want hoodlums from the neighborhood coming in and taking the property as a drug den. So he's going to close the door, or he's going to call the office and say, "Hey, this is Jim over from unit 1 on Grand. We got a problem." So you got eyes and ears on the street, um, that help you out. It's almost like a free property manager on site.
Yeah.
I mean, usually we don't put property managers in properties until we get 20, 30, 40 units, but on apartment buildings. But on a 45 unit, you got people in there that are sometimes very nosy and very communicative, which is what you want. You
Yeah.
want nosy neighbors in your house.